Sultan was the kind of man who never had to chase anything. A thriving business, a cozy home, his wife Maria, who was his anchor, and friends who filled his weekends with laughter. At 42, life had never taught him to expect an ending. He liked the quiet certainty of his mornings, coffee in the kitchen. There were plans for trips they hadn't taken yet. He thought there would always be time, until one morning, a single sentence began to change it all. In the doctor's office, the air was still. The doctor ended up saying, last stage cancer, 4 to 6 months. Maria held Sultan's hand tightly, trying not to cry. Sultan sat very still, eyes on the space between them and the desk. His heartbeat stayed calm, but something else began to move inside him. He could spend those months waiting for an end, or building something that would outlast him. Walking out of the hospital, Sultan set one rule: no pity, only purpose. He shared it only with his closest circle. The world didn't need to mourn him early. He had work to do. The papers in his hand guessed how long he had. He chose what mattered most with the time he had left. But where do you begin when you're counting in months? 2 streets from his home stood an abandoned brick building. Its windows were blind with dust, its doors chained shut. He had walked past it for years without really seeing it. That day, he stopped. A shelter, he thought. A place for those whose next night is the hardest. The building was broken, and so was he. Restoring it would give others shelter and him peace. An idea is the easy part. Turning it into reality would be a race against the clock. Permits, costs, manpower, time slipping. His wife, Maria, the love of his life, stood beside him to finish his last wish. She turned doubt into lists, lists into calls, calls into help. Night after night at the kitchen table, their plans grew, and so did their hope. And then, the town began to notice. Here, it started with one neighbor dropping off bricks, then another bringing paint. Soon strangers were standing in the sunlight, sleeves rolled, turning ruin into rooms. Sultan wasn't just building a shelter, he was building a community. And in the faces around him, he saw something powerful. People choosing to spend their time helping him spend his. The clock still ticked, but each strike now sounded like progress, not loss. But the days were running out, and his strength was running with them. On the last day he could lift a hammer, Sultan stood in the shelter he had built, Maria by his side. They smiled, knowing charity leaves joy in the heart of the giver first. Together they opened the door to welcome those in need. It was the last thing he would build, and the first to carry his name. And just like that, his work was done. Sultan died on a cold morning. The town gathered at the shelter now called the Summer Haven Foundation. Inside, meals were served, beds were made, respect was given. The building stood against the wind, just as he had stood against the time. An invincible summer isn't a season, it's a choice. And even in the coldest winter, you can choose to keep it alive for someone else. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us share more stories that matter.